This is video of George Herbert Walker Bush when he crashed into the sea as a young pilot. It's what we call a hero. If you're young, playing video games, shopping online, or fulminating on Facebook, it's because of something called leisure time. And leisure time was brought to you by millions of men and women whose bravery in times of war made our idle activity possible. I wonder, would we even be here if it weren't for men like him? The passing of George Herbert Walker Bush reminds me of the recent passing of John McCain. It also reminds me that only losing great men and women unifies people. We try to forget all about the other crap. In fact, we realize much of that crap is pointless. People come and go on our planet and in our lives, and it helps to remember that all of us have something in common with the great ones. With the exception of a few chuckle buckets who use such events to score political points, it's actually a shared loss that reveals how we really are. None of us tweet in the face of death. Kindler and gentler. Remember those words? It's a return to the baseline of human goodness. A great person dies, and we can observe the rituals with reverence and respect, as though it's second nature. God help those who can't. It's probably best to ignore them. So for this week, it's not a bad thing to use this passing of a great man as an excuse to make life better. Less finger-pointing, more handshakes. I'm sure in time we'll get back to our tribes, but for now, let's do the guy a favor. Be kind and gentle in case he's watching. So, Dana, I'm sitting actually in your chair, which I feel quite strange.
So do I.
Yes. I don't like being this close to Jesse.
Yep. Stop touching me under the table.
So, Dana, the reverence lasted 10 seconds.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You started it.
Yes. Dana, you're in D.C. The state funeral's tomorrow. What are your thoughts? Anything that moved you particularly today?
Yes. Well, it's obviously an honor to be here and to be able to have known them and to talk about them. I thought your monologue was spot on, Greg.
Thank you.
Bloody on. Very good. A couple of things that touched me today. I got a chance to interview Vice President Dan Quayle.
Yes.
And to look back at 1988 when he gave the convention speech then. And, of course, you know, I remember that time. I'm sure you guys do, too. Maybe Jesse doesn't. Might be too young. Maybe Lisa Booth wasn't paying attention then because she's so young as well. But it does just, you realize that things change. Parties evolve. People have a way of sort of forgetting what things were like back then. And so moments like this allow you a chance to pause. The moment that really touched me today, though, was when Senator Bob Dole went to the Capitol. He's 95 years old, and as you see there, he is helped by an assistant to stand so that he could properly and in his way pay his respects to George H.W. Bush, who was a very good friend of his. Of course, they were competitors, but friendly competitors. But, Greg, I think it was last week we were talking about the greatest generation. I'm sorry, actually, it was Andy Ferguson's piece.
Right.
He was a friend of yours and a speechwriter for George H.W. Bush, and he wrote about a speech he had to give in which in 1992, and during his reelection, the political consultants said, don't talk about his war service. Don't let him talk about his war service because it will make him look too old in comparison to Bill Clinton. Then, 4 weeks before the election, the political consultants changed their minds and think, oh, wait, maybe we should highlight his war service. And he writes this speech, and at the end of it, he says, in the article he wrote, Ferguson says, nearly all of them are gone now. And I think maybe that's why it feels very poignant that this greatest generation, we're having to say goodbye to them.
It's true. It's not just Mr. Bush. It's who he symbolizes, an entire, millions of men that are no longer here. Juan, you worked for, were you at the Post in the 88? You probably ran into President Bush when he wasn't president or vice president.
He was vice president. That's when I spent most of the time with him, was flying around the country, going to Republican events to try to help get Ronald Reagan reelected, Greg. And so I had a wonderful time. It was kind of like, being at the feet of the master, because you talk about a political, he had been head of the Republican National Committee in addition to running twice for Senate unsuccessfully, but then holding a House seat twice from Houston. So he had been through a lot politically, knew all the political leadership going back to the Goldwater days of '64. And you talk about a Republican Party expert. In terms of, I was just saying, he's famous for writing notes to people, and I'm sure Dana has a ton. I have some, but he would write notes to all these party leaders so that they felt that they had a personal relationship with him. And the axiom here was don't call somebody up to ask a favor, a political favor, a personal favor, right out the box without saying, how you doing? Yeah. Who are you? How are the kids? And that's the relationship he had, so that even people who disagreed with him, specifically, I would guess, in this day of tribes, as you say, Greg, the Democrats, oh my gosh, Democrats had a pretty good relationship. I mean, didn't always come to good political ends, because remember, in terms of the budget deal where he allowed taxes to be raised in order to lower the deficit, it was then held against him by some in the party, especially the far right, the Newt Gingrich types, who said, oh, you're breaking your pledge not to raise taxes. Read my lips, no new taxes. But this is an example I keep saying that I would hold up to my children as the kind of person that you want to be, someone who is about public service, love of country, love of family, and treated people as individuals, not as, gee, I'm George H.W. Bush, and who are you? No, it was like, tell me about you.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, thoughts?
Just some personal reflections, because I kind of came up under the age of Bush. He was the vice presidency when I was young, and then his presidency, and then his son's presidency kind of formed who I thought a great statesman in America would be. Just a few things come to mind: humility, dignity, class, and love. You think about, he oversaw America winning the Cold War. That was a time where he could have said Americans should just beat our chests and gloat and spike the football. Instead, he didn't. And he said absolutely nothing. And that silence was very important at that time, and that was a very powerful moment. I think he was, raised in the prep school, boarding school era where, good sportsmanship is drilled into you, and he always won with class and dignity. Also, when he kicked Saddam out of Kuwait, he had an opportunity to rush to Baghdad and overthrow the entire government, and he was humble enough to know the limitations of American military power. And I think everyone, Republicans and Democrats, look back at that and say that was a very wise and humble and noble decision. Juan picked up on a few things. The personal relationships he had with people, professional relationships, friendships. He really conducted it in a classy way. He communicated on stationery or picking up the phone. And he did that for so many decades that he generated so much goodwill. And towards the end, the Republican Party was the party of Bush. The Rolodex, all of the people that he knew, the networks across the entire country, just had so much honor and reverence for him and his family that when he called and asked for something, it was sure. It wasn't a political favor. It was you were doing something for a friend. And then lastly, love. In terms of his relationship with Barbara and his sons, publicly at least, you'd think a man of his generation wouldn't be conditioned to show that kind of affection towards other people, especially his family, in public. But his love and affection, the way he displayed it, was very modern. He wasn't afraid of embracing people and crying and articulating that love. And I think every father and every son in this country should look at the relationship that he had with his sons and say that is how a true father-son relationship should be.
Well, I was going to say, I found myself this week reading his letters. And I think there's been so much talk about his integrity, kindness, the kind of man he was. And if you read his letters, you can see it. And, the written word always lasts so much longer than, what you say on TV or what you say during a debate or what have you. And that's a beautiful thing for him, because what a great legacy to leave behind. And, Vice President Mike Pence talked about this yesterday when the former president, when he wrote a letter to his son, when he landed his first tailhook landing as a Marine aviator, and saying that he shares the pride that Mike Pence has in his son. You look at the letter he left Bill Clinton saying that you are our president. I am rooting for you, even though he defeated him and he was a one-term president. What a beautiful thing to have that sort of character, to leave that message for Bill Clinton. You look at the love letters to Barbara and what a beautiful, loving relationship that they had as a couple. The letter that he wrote about his daughter Robin, who they lost, and talking about the fact that she's always going to remain with them. So just all these letters, what a beautiful legacy for him to leave behind for future Americans to see the kind of integrity that the man had.
So, Dana, what's going to happen tomorrow at the funeral?
Well, you'll have eulogies from George W. Bush. I think that one will be hard for me to get through because I'm quite close to him. And as Christopher Buckley, another speechwriter, wrote, that they might have been New England roots, but they had the tear ducts of a Sicilian grandmother. Then you have Brian Mulroney, who is a Prime Minister of Canada, one of 41's best friends on the world stage. Former Senator Alan Simpson from the great state of Wyoming will also eulogize him, and then it'll be finalized with John Meacham, of the the historian who wrote so much about him. The last thing I would say is something that Greg, I think you and I have said this several times. 41 really embodied this, and we should all keep this in mind. Politics might be what we do, but it is not who we are.
Yeah, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Dana.